Hi, I'm Leah.
I'm Aaron.
I'm Liz. With all the focus on big holiday blockbusters, we want to shine a light on some documentaries. I saw West of Memphis.
3 young boys murdered in cold blood.
Arrested at 2:44 p.m., charged with 3 counts of capital murder.
We don't believe the people of Arkansas are going to be satisfied until there is a new trial.
I saw Central Park 5.
Last night, a woman jogger was found unconscious and partially clothed in Central Park. She was beaten and sexually assaulted.
I was going nuts. No blood on the kids. Nobody could identify them, but if they confessed, and that was that.
We falsely convicted them, and we walked away from our crime.
And I saw Chasing Ice.
This is the memory of the landscape. That landscape is gone. It may never be seen again in the history of civilization, and it's stored right here.
We've all just seen it. So, Liz, why don't you start us off?
All right, well, I am obsessed with the West Memphis 3. And the West Memphis 3 are Baldwin, Jessie, Misskelley, and Damien Echols. And they were 3 young men who were convicted and imprisoned for murdering 3 little children in West Memphis, Arkansas in 1993. This film is told through the point of view of Lorri, and Lorri is Damien Echols' wife. And Damien and Lorri met while Damien was in prison, and they were writing letters to each other and talking about fighting the power.
And she moved down from a great career in New York and joined him.
Yeah. To spend full time fighting for his freedom, which is amazing. And what's interesting about West of Memphis is that this film really revolves around the celebrity involvement in the case. So we have interviews with Peter Jackson and Fran Walsh, who are actually producers on the film, and Henry Rollins, Natalie Maines from the Dixie Chicks, and Eddie Vedder, who actually wrote a song about Damien Echols. West of Memphis is directed by Amy Berg, who's known for Deliver Us from Evil. Right. There's just so much to say because the case of the West Memphis 3 has to do with the fact that these 3 young men were incarcerated because they listened to Metallica and wore trench coats, and people thought of them as Satanists, and a lot of people lied on the stands about them and their character, and there's just this rush of discrimination going on in West Memphis. West of Memphis takes you back to the beginning. It tells you about new revelations about the case. It brings up new suspects, and it talks about new evidence, but at the same time, there's this emotional spine about Lorri and Damien and their love and the fact that she's fought over 10 years for his freedom.
He was 21, I guess, when I met him. I mean, I would ask him for advice before I would ask anybody.
The film is narrated by Lorri, Damien's wife, reading letters between her and Fran Walsh, Peter Jackson's wife. The structure of the film is fantastic. It's not preachy, it's not simplistic, and it's doling out a massive amount of information in its running time. What's so great about this movie is that even if you've never heard of the West Memphis 3 or you're obsessed with them like I am, this movie will entertain and it will inform virgineers or people who are avid followers of the case.
I have a little bit of a different documentary to talk about. Mine is Chasing Ice. This film follows James Balog, a photographer who has worked for National Geographic and has also published some of his own materials in books. And he creates the Extreme Ice Survey, which is an attempt to track and monitor glacial recession in certain parts of the Northern Hemisphere. So essentially what he does is he takes 25 cameras and sets them up in different places, for example, Iceland and Alaska. He wants to show people that climate change is real and that things are actually happening that are much worse than we suspected.
Ever since glaciers have entered the ocean, hundreds of thousands of years ago, ice has always calved off. But what we're seeing now is the Greenland ice sheet thinning out and dumping ever more ice and water into the ocean.
The problem with the film is that it's only 70 minutes long. And amidst all of this information and all of the shots of the glaciers, we get a little bit of Balog's personal problems. He seems to have some medical issues with his knees, I guess from all of the hiking and climbing that he's done in his life.
This knee has had 2 surgeries on it already, and it really could use a third.
It just kind of lacks urgency, but it looks amazing, and there are some absolutely incredible things to see.
A lot of people argue that climate change is just occurring as a natural state of things. Does this film have a political agenda?
It definitely does, but it doesn't necessarily force it down your throat. I think it just shows you evidence. The point is to show that we are producing a large amount of greenhouse gases, and that is leading to climate change, and the rate at which these things are changing is becoming more and more drastic as time goes by. Honestly, the best part of this film is the visuals, the time-lapse photography. By the end of the film, you get to see these glaciers moving back miles at a time over 3 years, and it's scary to watch.
Speaking of scary, my film is Central Park 5 by Ken Burns, who is a very well-known, prominent documentary filmmaker. He has brought us the Civil War, jazz, baseball, Unforgivable Blackness, the story of Jack Johnson. He is very kind of poetic, and he likes to take his time. I mean, these are documentaries that span hours of television viewing. Central Park 5 is a bit of a departure for him. It focuses on how 5 black and brown young men happened to be in Central Park on the same evening as a white female jogger who was grabbed, beaten, and raped and left for dead. The New York Police Department, outraged as were most of the people at that time, were in a hurry and were pressured to find the people who had done this, and they pursued these 5 young men who ranged in ages between 14 and 16, even though they had no evidence other than what we later found out were coerced, videotaped confessions.
Once that confession is taken, and once that confession is in the air, it corrupts everything else.
So Burns represents the New York Police Department as well as the New York District Attorney's Office as being really quite overzealous and rushing to judgment because they want to get the monsters and the bestial, wilding animals who engaged in this behavior, did this to this woman. The film is not only an indictment of the criminal justice system, but it is also a huge critique of the popular media, particularly at this time.
Has anyone admitted that they made a mistake?
Interestingly, the film is about an injustice, so it's real clear that these guys were wrongfully treated, right? And so that an actual serial rapist came forward and said, I'm the one that really did this. So even after it emerged that this guy was the one that really did it, Mateus Reyes, there was resistance on the part of the New York Police Department as well as the District Attorney's Office. People like Linda Fairstein built her entire career, a significant portion of her career and her fame on this case. For law enforcement to say we made a mistake meant that Mateus Reyes remained on the streets and was able to commit additional crimes.
The story of the West Memphis 3 is a captivating one, and this film truly does it justice. Everyone should check it out as soon as possible. See it.
Chasing Ice makes a strong visual case that we need to pay attention to the effects of climate change. But at a running time of 110 minutes and all that wavering that the film does, it's not destination viewing in a theater, so I'm gonna give it a stream it.
Ken Burns makes a very compelling case in the Central Park 5 that sometimes the pursuit of justice can lead to injustice. See it.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Yay, documentaries.
Yay, documentaries.
Wish there was a little more tension in my movie.
No, but you have collapse.
Yeah, you have collapse.
I have friction.
You have